Be yourself is advice you've probably heard hundreds of times. It gets said time and again because it makes people feel good. It's advice that reassures you to not be afraid. The world will love you as you are. But what if that's not true? What if being yourself doesn't feel good? What if it actually feels terrible? There's not really any advice about that, right? The advice just starts and ends with be yourself. And they make it sound so easy. It's crazy because I feel like the value of authenticity is actually at an all-time high right now. People seem to have stopped flexing all over social media. Like when I look at my YouTube homepage, I see people who are just sitting in their room talking to their camera and getting a lot of engagement. But I'm sure there's people who go out there and be themselves and everything still sucks. In fact, it probably feels worse. What happens when you reflect about who you actually are and all you notice are the flaws, fears, and weaknesses you wish weren't there? No one talks about that part. No one tells you that being yourself doesn't always feel good. Instead, we're told to focus on the positives, to love ourselves no matter what. You listen to the advice, and now you have to face all the parts of yourself that you'd rather ignore. The parts that make you feel lazy, insecure, or awkward. It's a tough realization, and it's easy to stop there and shrug and tell yourself, well, I guess this is just who I am. But in my mind, that's not self-acceptance. That's settling for less than what you're capable of. I think the truth is, being yourself, even when you hate it, is only the first step to becoming your best self. I realized this personally when I started to reflect on parts of myself that I didn't really want to admit were true. For the longest time, I thought I just wasn't good at connecting with people. I'd show up to college and work events, and I would make small talk and laugh at the right moments, but afterward, I would feel drained, and I wouldn't really make any friends. I told myself it was because I was introverted, or because I just didn't click with people. But over time, I realized that wasn't the whole story. It wasn't the socializing that exhausted me, it was the fact that I was holding back. I was keeping people at an arm's length away. I kept everything light and surface level because I wasn't sure what would happen if I let my guard down. What if I shared something personal and they judged me? What if they didn't care? That fear kept me from being open with others and from building the deeper connections I actually wanted. It wasn't until I started admitting that fear to myself, that fear of vulnerability, that things began to change. Just being myself meant accepting that I was someone who avoided emotional risks because I didn't want to be hurt. And yeah, those realizations didn't feel good. It showed me exactly how far I was from the person I wanted to be. But once I acknowledged them, I could start asking myself why I felt that way. Why did I think vulnerability was a bad idea? Why didn't I want to let people in? And as I worked through those questions, something changed. I started sharing more small, honest parts of myself. Some people pulled away, but then others really appreciated it, and they stuck around to become great friends. When you're honest with yourself, your strengths, your flaws, your tendencies, you stop avoiding what you actually are. Avoiding vulnerability and keeping my guard up, it was undeniably a part of who I was. But just because I was those things didn't mean they had to be a part of me forever. Once I started challenging those thoughts and those patterns, I found that I actually liked being around people. I enjoyed connection and making memories. And when I stopped shielding myself from others, I stopped feeling so tired. Instead, I felt fulfilled. And that's what my point is. Being yourself isn't about staying the same. It's about starting from a place of honesty. The problem with just be yourself is that it sounds like a finish line. Like once you're yourself, everything's good and you're done. But that's not how it works. Being yourself means confronting some hard truths. For some people, being yourself might mean admitting you're afraid of trying because failing feels too painful. For others, it might mean recognizing that you sabotage relationships because you don't believe you deserve them. These aren't easy things to admit, and some people go their whole lives pretending that it's not true. But once you just be yourself, you take the first step to move forward. You can't change anything about yourself until you accept who you are right now. This is why just be yourself isn't enough. Acceptance isn't about saying, this is just who I am and I'll never change. It's about looking at yourself honestly, flaws and all, and saying, this is where I'm starting. Think of it like trying to get a higher rank in a game like League or Marvel Rivals. You can't get better until you know where you stand. If you want to climb ranks but you keep losing winnable games, it's easy to blame your own teammates or call it bad luck. But if you really want to improve, The first step would be to look at your own gameplay and ask, what am I doing wrong? Maybe you need to train more in aim lab, or you need to practice your communication. Maybe you just need to understand more about the game. It's not fun to admit that you're making mistakes. It's not fun to be yourself when yourself, in this case, is a garbage player. But if you don't face those truths, you might be hard stuck forever. Self-honesty is like reviewing your matches. It's taking a hard look at your choices and patterns and saying, this is where I'm at, and I'm figuring out where to improve. And as you put in the work, little by little, you'll start to climb. There's still a ton of work to be done after you admit what and where you are, but you can't grow until you know where you stand. You're not going to wake up one day and be a completely different person. Being yourself is a lifelong process, not a one-time accomplishment. It takes constant reflection and self-awareness. If you can look at yourself and say, I procrastinate because I'm scared of failing, or I push people away when I feel insecure, you've already done something huge. You've opened the door to improvement. No one is locked into who they are. You're constantly changing whether you realize it or not. So why not choose the direction of that change? If you've ever wanted to change something, whether it's letting go of fears or building better relationships or improving yourself, it starts with one thing, being honest about where you are. So be yourself, even if you hate it. Because once you're honest about who you are, your strengths, your flaws, your patterns, you can start becoming who you want to be. Being yourself is just the first step. The rest is up to you. Later.